Okay, here we are. Foley Square, Southern District of New York. Inner City Press is here. Today, the opening of the OneCoin trial, U.S. versus Mark Scott, here in the Southern District of New York. We're going to be covering it. We've been covering it in great detail in the run-up, and we're going to cover it in even more detail here as it plays out. Today, jury selection, so that's not necessarily the fastest day, but it will be a day, and they'll choose the jurors who will decide the fate of Mr. Mark Scott. Thursday, after the day of Mark Scott trial, there'll be another pretrial conference in the case of Mr. Konstantin Ignatov, and we'll cover that as well. So it's going to be quite something. Where is Ruja? Some are asking. Will it come out? Sebastian Greenwood? What's happening? So we're looking forward to this. That's all I can say. But okay, here we are. We've just witnessed and reported on the pre-jury arguments and rulings of Judge Ramos in the OneCoin trial. Mark Scott, he's at the defense table with Arlen Devlo Brown at the government table. DeMays, pretty much winning the arguments. There was an argument to suppress the phone of Mr. Mark Scott's wife, Russian, as it turns out, using a Russian keyboard. This was denied. The agent, it seems, simply wasn't reckless, according, the same agent will be available all trial, and so Mr. Devlin Brown has been advised to call him as his own witness if he wants him. It turns out that Ruja Ignatova paid to rent an apartment right underneath Mr. Armenta's apartment and was able to find out when he became a cooperating witness. She's also caught on tape, according to the argument this morning, saying that you know what those Russians can do. The defense is very concerned that the jury will think this means violence and that she's hanging with a bad crowd. The government seems to say it just meant hacking, only hacking. Anyway, we'll be doing a series of these as we go back and forth between the buildings here at SDNY. Heading back to the 500 Pearl because it's going to take a while to pick a jury. In fact, the jurors, I don't know if I'm allowed, we're definitely never going to show any photos of jurors. There was a big controversy about someone else doing that in the Honduras trial, but I can say that they're getting a kind of a film strip about their duties as jurors generally. So the CSOs in the courtroom are like, it's going to be a while, and it will be a while, but I believe we'll have opening arguments before the end of the day if Judge Ramos is correct, and so far, he's correct. Okay, to be continued. Okay, well, jury selection continues. Scott, the OneCoin case. I have to say, it's not, but this process of your trial. People being asked questions. What do they know about insurance? Do they know about multi-level marketing? Also, to say they know some entities, whether they're aware of the Bank of Ireland. Are you aware of the Bank of New York, Deutsche Bank, Lord, the law firm that Mark Scott worked for, Morgan Stanley? There's sidebars about people's the economic impact on them of a 2 or 3 week trial. So it's proceeding apace. We'll see whether we get to opening arguments today, but it's coming along. And Judge Ramos definitely keeps it moving, as he did with his rulings this morning. So soon we'll get into the meat of the matter, but this is an interim update. We also came elsewhere in 40 Foley to look for a sentencing in a rare case from 2002 and 2003. Even rarer, a sentencing done by a now Circuit Court Appeals Judge, Danny Chen. Didn't list any room, so we asked around. There was no room listed also in the lobby of 500 Pearl. We were somehow not led to believe. We were told by somebody, I think, who believed it, that it would be in room 506, but it was not, nor was it in room 110. So the question is, given it's a case this old, why is the sentencing being done in 2019 in the 2002 case? There was a case like this in front of Judge Sullivan from a 2005 case of Mr. Rodriguez. Turned out it was a cooperator being rewarded with time served 14 years after the fact. Kind of hard to show danger, need for sealing. There was another guilty plea that we covered and we've written a story about. And we're not even publishing the name. See, we're responsible, but we do demand a certain amount of transparency. So, Inner City Press, it continues, and we'll bring that. Oh, forget, at least here you can ask. At the UN, when you ask, you get roughed up and thrown out. And we have 9 questions today pending before Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations, including some financial questions about El Chapo, from whom the UN has indirectly taken money. But more on that anon. Take a look at innercitypress.com. We will continue here on the OneCoin case at 40 Foley, Southern District of New York, innercitypress.com. Okay, well, the jury's been selected in the OneCoin, U.S. versus Scott case. It took all day. There were no opening arguments today. They'll be tomorrow at 9:30, according to Judge Ramos. He did give some instructions about not reading social media, not talking to anyone, getting in early for the cafeteria bagels, but 9:30 it'll be. He told the lawyers to get there earlier. None of them had any issues at the end. So it's not much of an update, but it is at least the jury has been selected. 12 jurors, 4 alternates. All I can say is more beards than would usually be the case, which is okay. Here we are, Foley Square, Southern District of New York, Inner City Press. We're here earlier than usual because we've been told that even before the OneCoin trial, opening arguments began at 9:30. There may be lawyer arguments at 9 o'clock before Judge Ramos. Yesterday we covered jury selection. We also covered some of the pre-jury selection arguments, including the factoid that Ruja Ignatova rented space underneath Mr. Armenta, now a government cooperator, learned that he was a cooperator, and disappeared. She's been missing since 2017. The company rolled on. And now, its money man, one of its money men, money laundering suspect, indictee, Mr. Mark Scott, is on trial here in the Southern District of New York. Soon, the brother, Konstantin Ignatov, will be on trial. His pre-trial conference will be on Thursday. Also today, I do want to say this. There is another case we have to cover, and we will cover happily, having to do with Halk Bank, a bank in Turkey, a state bank involved in Iran sanctions violations. What they've said is that they don't want to show up in court. They had a long-time U.S. law firm. It's not a small bank at all. King and Spalding. But once they got indicted, suddenly King and Spalding was no longer their lawyer and said, "We're not their lawyer. You haven't served them yet." They were served again. Judge Berman said they can be served that way. Now they want to make a special appearance to try to get it dismissed without actually subjecting themselves to the jurisdiction of the court. This morning, Inner City Press sent the question to the UN. Since this is about Iran sanctions violations, right, and the Iran sanctions regime is part of the UN Security Council, what's Antonio Guterres' comment on Halk Bank ignoring the law? You know what? There's no comment because Antonio Guterres is a fugitive from the law. He has taken money from the Gulbenkian Foundation, which tried to sell its oil company to China Energy Fund Committee, whose Patrick Ho is in that building right down the street. You can look it up. What else has he done? Well, a trial here in the Southern District of New York showed conclusively that the current president of Honduras, Juan Orlando Hernandez, took $1 million from El Chapo, noted narco trafficker. Soon, while refusing questions on it, Mr. Antonio Guterres bragged about getting $50,000 for Juan Orlando Hernandez's Honduran regime. So we can say, and we do, UN funded by Chapo. How low can they go? We've written to the Human Rights Office of the UN in Honduras. No answer. We've written to the UN itself about sexual abuse by peacekeepers. 2 new cases disclosed yesterday. No answer. In any event, that's another story for another time. Today's story is as follows. OneCoin. OneCoin and the Big House. Big Tony, Honduras, and the Big House. Impunity in the Southern District of New York. To be continued.